He arrived at the CDC wearing a janitor's uniform, asking to see the viral samples. The scientists laughed and called security, but when they saw what he wrote on that paper, they couldn't believe their eyes. The winter wind cut through Atlanta like a surgical blade that January morning when Nathan Rivers pushed through the employee entrance of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. At 46, he moved with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned that sudden movements attracted unwanted attention. His janitorial uniform hung loose on his frame that had once filled out tailored suits. In conference rooms across 3 continents, the name tag read simply Nate, because people in positions like his didn't deserve full names, didn't deserve the dignity of complete identity. He clutched his worn cleaning supplies close, eyes down, as he made his way through corridors where he'd once walked with purpose, where his opinions had once shaped international health policy, where his voice had once saved millions of lives. The viral pathogen research wing was in chaos. Scientists rushed between laboratories, their faces masks of controlled panic behind protective equipment. Phones rang incessantly. The air hummed with desperate energy. 23 people were dying in Grady Memorial Hospital, and in 48 hours, the government would quarantine the entire city if they couldn't identify the pathogen. The virus was a ghost killing with perfect efficiency, mutating faster than any known organism, leaving the world's best minds helpless. Every test failed. Every treatment accelerated death. In the medical emergency unfolding across Atlanta, the CDC's failure wasn't just professional, it was existential. Bodies were piling up in the hospital morgue. The emergency room had become a waiting room for death, and the world's premier disease control institution couldn't even name what was killing them. Out of the way, cleaner, doctor. Marcus Thornton didn't break stride as he brushed past Nathan in the hallway, nearly knocking the mop bucket over. At 52, Thornton ruled the virology department like a feudal lord. His reputation built on 3 breakthrough vaccines and an ego that filled every room he entered. His white coat was pristine, monogrammed, a symbol of authority in a building where hierarchy meant everything. "Sorry, doctor." "Thornton," Nathan mumbled, steadying his bucket. Thornton had already forgotten him, turning to his colleague. "The latest samples show complete mutation in the spike proteins. We're back to 0. How does a virus rewrite itself every 6 hours, doctor?" Olivia Zhang fell into step beside him, tablet in hand, her expression grim. She was brilliant, 40 years old, and carried the weight of failed pandemic predictions that had made her paranoid about every decision. "The WHO is calling every hour. They want answers we don't have. The emergency protocols are worthless. If we can't identify the pathogen," Thornton snapped. He stopped abruptly, causing Nathan to halt mid-stride with his mop. Don't you have floors to clean somewhere else? This is a restricted area. I'm assigned to the BSL- for lab tonight, sir. Cleaning protocol after the research team finishes." Zhang's eyes narrowed. "Who approved a janitor in the biosafety lab during an active crisis, doctor?" "Foster, Mum. Someone has to maintain sterility protocols. Dr. Foster." Thornton's laugh was sharp. "Of course. Our paranoid security chief probably wants someone watching us work." He leaned closer to Nathan, close enough that Nathan could smell expensive coffee on his breath. "You know what we do in those labs, cleaner? We handle viruses that could end human civilization. One mistake, one contaminated surface, and you could kill everyone in this building. Think your mop can handle that responsibility?" "I follow all safety procedures, sir." "I'm sure you do." Thornton's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just stay invisible, like good hospital janitors should. We have actual work to do." They continued down the corridor, their voices fading. Nathan waited until they rounded the corner, then allowed himself one long breath. 12 years ago, Marcus Thornton had been his junior researcher, brilliant, ambitious, and constantly seeking Nathan's approval. Now he walked past him like he was part of the furniture. The pain was old, familiar. Nathan pushed his cart forward. The emergency operations center thrummed with controlled chaos. Screens covered every wall, displaying patient data, viral models, and the climbing death toll. 23 infected, 23 dead within 72 hours. No survivors, not one. Dr. Gerald Foster stood at the center of it all, a weary man of 58, whose paranoia had saved the CDC twice and alienated him from everyone else. His eyes tracked every person in the room like a surveillance system. Status, he barked. A young nurser named Tag read emergency room nurse Jen looked up from her station. Patient 24 just presented at Grady. Same symptoms. We have maybe 72 hours before he's dead. Quarantine, full isolation. But Dr. Foster, your staff at the hospital are terrified. 3 of them are showing stress symptoms. If this spreads beyond contained areas, it won't. Foster's voice was steel. It can't. Where's the night cleaning crew, sir? The janitor. Rivers. Where is he? Agent Sarah Collins, FBI, looked up from her laptop in the corner. At 34, she had the hardened eyes of someone who'd seen too much evil disguised as ordinary. You're seriously worried about the janitor? I'm worried about everyone. You know his file. I know he's a convicted bioterrorist who killed 11 researchers including his own wife. I know he served 7 years for creating and releasing an experimental pathogen. I know he's working in one of the most sensitive disease facilities in the world. Because someone thought that was a good idea. Collins closed her laptop. If I had my way, he wouldn't be allowed within 100 miles of this building. Foster nodded slowly. And yet here he is. Our protocols require cleaning staff even during emergencies. Sterility matters. But I want him watched. He's already watched. I have eyes on him whenever he's in sensitive areas. Good. Foster turned back to the screens. Because if this virus is artificial, if someone created this thing, then we have a terrorist attack in progress. And our only convicted bioterrorist is mopping floors in the building where we're trying to stop it. Zhang's voice cut through from the doorway. You think Rivers is involved? I think, Foster said carefully, that coincidences don't exist in biosecurity. A man creates a deadly pathogen, kills his colleagues, goes to prison, and then a mysterious supervirus appears exactly where he's working. At minimum, we investigate. He was cleared to work here, Zhang pointed out. Clearance doesn't mean innocence. It means someone made a judgment call. Maybe the wrong call. Foster's jaw tightened. This virus is too perfect, too targeted, too designed. Every virology expert in this building is baffled, but it's killing with the precision of something engineered. If Rivers is involved, we need to know before the quarantine deadline. Collins stood. Where is he now? BSL for observation area. He's waiting for the research team to clear out so he can clean. Then that's where I'll be. Nathan had learned patience in prison. 7 years of waiting taught you that time could be endured, that humiliation could be survived, that even the deepest despair had a rhythm you could learn to breathe through. He sat on a metal bench outside the biosafety laboratory, his cleaning cart beside him, and waited. Through the observation window, he could see them working. The BSL for lab was humanity's fortress against the microscopic apocalypse. Negative pressure, filtered air, researchers in full-body suits connected to independent oxygen supplies. Every surface gleamed. Every movement was protocol. And in the center of it all, under electron microscopes and genetic sequencers, was the virus that was going to kill Atlanta. His hands itched to help. 12 years of silence, 12 years of being invisible. And his mind still worked the way it always had. He could see the pattern in their movements, the growing desperation, the systematic failures. They were brilliant people doing everything right and getting nowhere. The door hissed open. Dr. Elizabeth Warren emerged. 70 years old and still sharp as the scalpels she'd once wielded in the field. She'd been Nathan's mentor, his colleague, his friend. She'd stood by him during the trial, testified to his character, and been professionally destroyed for it. Now she consulted for the World Health Organization, lending her credibility to crisis responses worldwide. She saw him on the bench. Their eyes met. For just a moment, something passed between them: recognition, regret, understanding. Then she looked away, because acknowledging the hospital janitor would only make both their lives harder. But she paused, just for a second, near his cleaning cart. The waste bin in Lab 3 needs emptying, she said to no one in particular. Lots of discarded notes. Researchers get sloppy when they're desperate. Then she was gone, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Nathan sat very still, Lab 3. Discarded notes. Agent Collins emerged from the shadows like she'd been part of them. Doctor. Warren seemed friendly. She was giving me instructions, Mum. I heard. Collins sat beside him, uninvited. You know what's interesting about you, Mr. Rivers? Nathan, please. You know what's interesting about you, *Mr. Rivers *. She continued as if he hadn't spoken, is that you're the only person in this building who isn't panicking. 23 dead. A virus nobody can identify. Quarantine countdown ticking. And you're sitting here calm as Sunday morning. I'm a janitor, Agent Collins. Panic isn't in my job description. Neither is bioterrorism, but you managed that. The words were designed to wound. Nathan let them land. I was convicted. I served my time. The court said I paid my debt. Courts can be wrong. Juries can be manipulated. Innocent men don't plead guilty. And guilty men don't maintain their innocence for 7 years in prison. But I did. Nathan met her eyes. I know what you think of me. What everyone here thinks. But I'm not your enemy. Then who is? Because someone made this virus, Mr. Rivers. Someone created something that kills with 100% efficiency and mutates faster than evolution allows. Someone with sophisticated knowledge of viral engineering and pathogen weaponization. Someone, she leaned closer, exactly like you. The observation window framed them like a painting, scientists in biosafety suits moving through their carefully choreographed dance of failure. Nathan watched Thornton gesture angrily at a monitor, watched Zhang shake her head at test results, watched a young lab technician named Rodriguez slump against a counter in exhaustion. Collins hadn't left. She sat beside him, silent now, her presence a constant reminder that he was suspect first, human second. You're going to sit here all night? Nathan asked. Until you go home. Those are my orders. Must be boring work. I've had worse assignments. She pulled out her phone, began scrolling. At least you're quiet. Last terrorist I babysat wouldn't shut up about government conspiracies. I'm not a terrorist. That's what they all say. She didn't look up from her screen. You know what your file says? That you were brilliant. Top of your field. 3 international outbreak responses. You saved millions of lives. And then you threw it all away to play God with viruses. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. Through the window, Thornton was shouting now. His voice muffled by the glass, but his fury evident. Another failed test. Another dead end. It doesn't matter what I say. You've already decided who I am. Try me. Why? So you can add it to your file? Use it against me later? Collins finally looked at him. You really think you're getting out of this clean, don't you? You think if you just keep your head down, mop your floors, stay invisible, that somehow you'll be redeemed? I think, Nathan said slowly, that redemption isn't something you get. It's something you earn. Every day, every choice, every moment you decide to be better than what people think you are. That's very philosophical for a janitor. I had a lot of time to think in prison. The lab door opened again. Thornton emerged first, tearing off his gloves with sharp, angry movements. Zhang followed, then Rodriguez, then 3 other researchers Nathan didn't recognize. They looked defeated, exhausted, terrified. 43 hours, Thornton was saying. 43 hours until they locked down the city, and we still don't have anything. Not an origin, not a treatment, not even a proper classification. This virus is a ghost. It's not a ghost, Zhang said quietly. It's just smarter than we are. Viruses aren't smart, Olivia. They're chemical reactions, RNA sequences, protein shells. They don't think. This one does. She held up her tablet, showing him a cascade of data. Look at the mutation pattern. It's not random. It's responsive. Every time we try a new test, it changes just enough to evade detection. Every treatment we attempt, it adapts. That's not natural evolution. That's design. The word came from Dr. Elizabeth Warren, who had appeared at the end of the hallway. That's intelligent design. Someone made this. The group fell silent. Even Thornton looked shaken. You're sure? Foster's voice came from behind them. He'd followed the research team out, his security instincts on high alert. I'm not sure of anything anymore, Warren admitted. But I've seen natural viruses. I've tracked their evolution across continents. This isn't that. This is something that was built to kill and built to hide. Collins stood abruptly. Then we have a bioterrorism event. We need to contact Homeland Security, lock down this facility. And in panic, Warren cut her off. Agent Collins, if this is terrorism, then whoever created it is either in this building or watching it very carefully. The moment we go into full lockdown, they'll know we're onto them. We need to be smarter than that. What we need, Foster said, is to identify the pathogen. Everything else is speculation until we know what we're fighting. Thornton ran a hand through his hair. We've tried everything. Every sequencing method, every classification protocol, every database match. This virus doesn't exist in any medical records. It's like it materialized out of thin air. Nothing materializes out of thin air. Warren's voice was sharp. It came from somewhere, someone. And if it was engineered, then it has a signature, a fingerprint. We just need to find it. Nathan's hands tightened on the handle of his mop. He could see it. Even from here, even through the glass, he'd seen enough in the discarded papers, the monitor displays, the frustrated gestures of the researchers. He knew what they were missing. The pattern was obvious to him, clear as daylight, but speaking up would mean revealing himself, would mean admitting he understood virology at a level that janitors shouldn't, would mean putting a target on his back. But 23 people were dead, and more were dying. Jean was studying her tablet, scrolling through data. The mutation rate is the key. It's too fast. Even with optimal conditions, natural viruses don't evolve this rapidly. Unless what? Thornton demanded. Unless it's not one virus. What if it's multiple viral components working together? A chimera? A chimera virus? Thornton's laugh was bitter. That's science fiction, Olivia. Combining different viral strains in a stable, functional pathogen? The complexity alone would require years of research and resources that a government lab would have, Foster finished, or a well-funded terrorist organization, or a rogue scientist with a grudge. All eyes turned to Nathan. He kept his gaze down, his posture submissive, everything about his body language screaming harmless. But his mind was racing. They were close, so close to the truth, but they were missing the crucial detail, the one piece that would make everything else make sense. Something to say, Rivers? Foster's voice was cold. No, sir. Just waiting to clean the lab. I bet you are. Collins moved closer, her hand resting casually on her hip where Nathan knew her service weapon sat. Waiting to get into that lab. Waiting to examine the samples. Waiting to see what brilliant minds couldn't figure out. I'm a janitor, Nathan said quietly. I clean. That's all. That's all now, Thornton said. But 12 years ago, you were creating pandemic-level pathogens in a lab. You killed your own wife and 10 other people. So forgive us if we don't trust you around the deadliest virus any of us have ever seen. The words hit like physical blows. Nathan absorbed them, let them settle into the familiar ache in his chest where grief lived. Sarah. Her name was Sarah, and she'd been brilliant and kind, and had believed in him until the moment the viral outbreak took her life. Their daughters had been 6 years old, Emma and Lily, twins who looked just like their mother. He didn't even know where they were now, adopted, separated, living lives that didn't include memories of their father. Dr. Thornton, Warren's voice cut through the tension. That's enough, is it? Because I remember what he did, Elizabeth. We all do. And now, conveniently, we have a crisis that only someone with his exact expertise could have created, or could solve, Warren said softly. The hallway went silent. Thornton stared at her. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. We're out of time, Marcus. 43 hours until quarantine. 23 dead. More dying. We've exhausted every conventional approach. Maybe we need an unconventional one. You want to let the bioterrorist examine the bioweapon? That's insane. What's insane is letting our pride kill people. Warren's eyes found Nathan's. Doctor. Rivers had his flaws, but stupidity wasn't one of them. He identified and contained 3 international outbreaks before any of us even knew they existed. He created the rapid response protocols we still use today. And whether we like it or not, he knows more about viral engineering than anyone in this building. He's a janitor, Zhang said, but her voice was uncertain. He's a janitor because we destroyed his life, Warren replied. That doesn't make him incompetent. It makes him available. Foster stepped forward. Even if I wanted to allow the switch, I don't. The protocols are clear. Rivers is a security risk. He doesn't have clearance. He doesn't have credentials. He's not even supposed to be in sensitive areas without supervision. Then supervise him, Warren said. Let Agent Collins stand over his shoulder. Let Dr. Foster monitor every move, but at least give him a chance to look at the data. What's the worst that could happen? He could be the one who created this virus, Thornton shot back. He could be setting us up. This could all be part of his plan. To what end? Warren's voice rose. To mop floors in the building where we're trying to stop him. To live in an efficiency apartment under FBI surveillance. To throw away any chance at a normal life just to kill random people in Atlanta. Does that sound like a plan to you, Marcus? Or does it sound like desperation to find a conspiracy where there might just be a tragedy? Thornton's jaw worked. I don't trust him. You don't have to trust him. You just have to be smart enough to use every resource we have before the city dies. The group stood frozen, a tableau of suspicion and desperate hope. Nathan remained seated on his bench, mop in hand, everything about him screaming insignificance. But inside, his heart hammered. This was it. The moment that would either vindicate him or condemn him forever. Foster looked at Collins. Your call, Agent. He's your responsibility. Collins studied Nathan for a long moment. If we do this, I'm with him every second. He touches nothing without my approval. He sees only what we show him. And at the first sign of suspicious behavior, he's back in custody. Clear? Clear, Nathan said quietly. Then let's see what the janitor knows about viral chimeras. Thornton's voice dripped with contempt. This should be entertaining, if nothing else. Warren crossed to Nathan, helped him stand. Up close, he could see the lines around her eyes, the weight of years and choices. Don't make me regret this, she whispered. I won't, he promised. And Nathan? She met his eyes. Whatever you see in there, whatever you figure out, be very careful how you present it. These people are looking for reasons to destroy you. Don't give them one. He nodded. She was right. One wrong move, one display of too much knowledge, and they'd see confirmation of his guilt rather than proof of his innocence. He had to be careful, strategic, show enough to help but not enough to threaten. The BSL for lab doors opened. The sterile white space beyond beckoned, full of secrets and death, and the truth Nathan had been seeking for 12 years. After you, Mr. Rivers, Collins said. Let's see what a mop can teach us about saving the world. The decontamination chamber hissed around them as Nathan stood in the negative pressure airlock. Collins watched him from the observation window, her hands still resting on her weapon even though glass and protocol separated them. Foster had positioned himself at the monitoring station, cameras tracking Nathan's every movement. Thornton and Zhang stood behind Foster, their expressions ranging from hostile to skeptical. Warren was the only one who looked hopeful. Standard cleaning protocol. Foster's voice crackled through the intercom. You touch only what you're authorized to touch. You move only where you're authorized to move. Understood. Understood, Nathan replied. The inner door opened. The lab stretched before him. All gleaming surfaces and advanced equipment that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Electron microscopes, gene sequencers, centrifuges, incubators. Every tool modern science could provide to understand the invisible killers that shaped human history. Nathan pushed his cleaning cart forward, but his eyes were already working, scanning, analyzing. The discarded papers Warren had mentioned were their crumpled printouts in a waste bin, marked for incineration. Protocol required all sensitive materials be destroyed, but in a crisis, people got sloppy. They scribbled notes and threw them away. They left monitors on with data displayed. They forgot that walls had ears and labs had eyes. Start with the floors, Collins ordered through the intercom. South corner. Work your way north. Nathan obeyed, pulling out his mop, mixing cleaning solution with practiced efficiency. But while his hands worked, his mind raced. The monitor nearest him showed a protein structure incomplete, fragmented, but familiar. The mutations they'd mentioned. He could see them now, the way the spike proteins shifted, creating new configurations every few hours. Too perfect, too precise. He mopped closer to the waste bin, glanced down as he passed, saw scribbled genetic sequences, frustrated notes in the margins, not matching any known profiles. Mutation rate impossible. 3 different viral families. 3 families. He felt his pulse quicken. Eyes on your work, Rivers, Foster's voice snapped. Nathan bent to his mop, working the floor in slow, methodical strokes. But he'd seen enough. The pieces were assembling in his mind, the pattern emerging like a photograph in Developer Solution. They were right about the chimera, wrong about almost everything else. Dr. Thornton, he said quietly, not looking up from his work. Silence from the observation room. Dr. Thornton, he repeated. The protein sequences on monitor 3. Can you pull up the lateral binding sites? More silence. Then, how do you know what's on monitor 3? I can see it from here, sir. And I think you're missing something. Thornton's laugh was harsh through the speaker. The janitor thinks we're missing something. This is rich. What are we missing, Rivers? Please enlighten us with your vast mopping expertise. Nathan stopped working, straightened. This was the moment, the decision point. He could stay safe, stay invisible, keep mopping. Or he could risk everything to save lives that might include people who hated him. You're looking at it as one virus, he said. But it's not. It's 3 viral components that have been artificially bound together. That's why it mutates so fast. Each component evolves independently, but the binding mechanism keeps them functional as a unit. The observation room had gone silent. The spike proteins, Nathan continued, his voice stronger now. They're not from a coronavirus. They're synthetic engineered to mimic binding patterns from 3 different viral families. Ebola for tissue invasion, influenza for respiratory transmission, and something else. Something I'd need to see the full sequence to identify. Zhang's voice came through, uncertain. How could you possibly know that from a glance at a monitor? Because I've seen this before. Nathan set down his mop. Not this exact configuration, but the methodology, the approach. Whoever made this virus didn't start from scratch. They used a template, a framework for viral chimeras that was theoretical when I was active in research. When you were creating bioweapons, you mean, Thornton said. When I was trying to prevent them. Nathan moved closer to the monitor, drawn to the data like a moth to flame. In 2013, there was a paper, Theoretical Virology. Drive. Chen at Beijing Institute. She proposed a binding mechanism that could stabilize multifamily viral chimeras. Everyone said it was impossible. Too complex, too unstable. But if someone actually built it, he trailed off, his eyes tracking the sequences on the screen. His hands moved without thinking, reaching toward the keyboard. Don't touch that, Collins barked. Nathan froze. I need to see the RNA sequences, the full genome map. If I'm right about the binding mechanism, you're not touching anything. Foster cut in. You've said your piece. Now step back and let actual scientists verify. There isn't time for verification. You have 42 hours. Less, actually, because patient 24 is already in the emergency room at Grady, and his viral load is climbing exponentially. By tomorrow morning, you'll have 30 infected. By tomorrow night, 60. This isn't a normal progression. The virus is designed to accelerate in population density. Designed, Zhang echoed. You keep saying that word. Because it's true. Nathan turned to face the observation window, knowing they could all see him now, knowing he was exposing himself. This is a weaponized pathogen. Someone created it specifically to overwhelm hospital systems and medical emergency responses. The mutation rate isn't a natural adaptation. It's a defense mechanism built into the genetic structure to evade testing and treatment. Thornton leaned forward to his microphone. And you know this how? Because you created it? I know this because I spent 15 years studying exactly this kind of threat. Because I wrote 3 papers on bioterror signatures in engineered pathogens. Because Nathan stopped, steadied himself. Because the person who created the virus that killed my wife used the same principles. And I've spent every day since then learning to recognize the fingerprints. The observation room was silent. Warren had tears in her eyes. The waste bin, Nathan said quietly. May I examine the discarded notes? Foster looked at Collins. Collins looked at Warren. Warren nodded slowly. Under direct observation, Foster said. Touch nothing else. Nathan crossed to the bin, pulled out the crumpled papers. His hands were steady despite his racing heart. Genetic sequences, test results, frustrated calculations, and they're buried in a corner of one page of notation that made his blood run cold. Binding site Alpha 7, he read aloud, failed to respond to ribavirin, showed increased replication under interferon treatment. So, Thornton demanded, so that's impossible with a natural virus. Interferon is an immune response that suppresses viral replication. But if the virus was designed to use interferon as a fuel source, Nathan looked up at the window. You're not fighting a virus. You're fighting a biological machine that gets stronger every time you try to treat it. Zhang's tablet clattered to the floor. That means, she whispered, that every patient we've treated, every antiviral we've given, we've been feeding it, making it stronger, killing them faster. Yes, Nathan said simply. Oh my God. She looked at Thornton. The hospital, Grady Memorial, they're using the standard viral protocol. Interferon therapy, ribavirin. They're accelerating the deaths, Nathan finished. You need to call them now. Stop all antiviral treatments immediately. The patients need supportive care, only fluids, oxygen, stabilization. Nothing that triggers immune response. Foster was already on his phone. Get me Grady Medical Center. Emergency room. Now. Thornton stared at Nathan through the glass, his expression unreadable. Even if you're right, and that's a big if, how do we treat it? If antivirals make it stronger, what's left? Nathan moved back to the monitor, his mind working through possibilities. We don't treat it. We dismantle it. The binding mechanism is the key. It's what holds the three viral components together. Break the binding, and the components fall apart. Individually, they're manageable. Together, they're lethal. And how do we break the binding? Zhang asked. I don't know yet. I'd need to see the full structural analysis, understand how the components interact. But it's possible. Everything that's built can be unbuilt. You sound very confident for someone looking at data for the first time, Collins said. Nathan met her eyes through the glass. I'm confident because this isn't the first time I've seen weaponized virology. It's just the first time I've seen it this sophisticated. He paused. Agent Collins, you think I created this. I understand why. My history, my expertise, the timing. But I need you to consider something. What? If I created this virus, why would I reveal how to stop it? Why not let it run? Why not watch the city burn and know I'd gotten away with it? Maybe, Collins said slowly, because you want to play hero. Want redemption. Want everyone to see how brilliant you are. Or maybe, Warren's voice cut in, because he's telling the truth, because he's innocent, and because 23 people are dead and he's the only one in this building who can save the rest. Thornton shook his head. This is insane. We're taking medical advice from a convicted felon, from someone who knows more about this virus in 20 minutes than we've learned in 3 days. Warren interrupted. Marcus, put aside your pride. Put aside your anger. Look at the evidence. He identified the chimera structure. He explained the mutation rate. He caught the interferon paradox. Everything he said makes sense. Everything he said could be information only the creator would know, Foster countered. Then test it, Nathan said. Run the analysis I suggested. Check the binding sites. Verify the interferon response. If I'm wrong, you've lost an hour. If I'm right, you've saved lives. Foster looked at the research team. Zhang, can you run those tests? She nodded slowly. It'll take time, but yes. If the binding mechanism is what he says, do it. Thornton, you supervise. I want independent verification of everything Rivers claims. And Rivers? Collins asked. Stays in the lab, under guard, until we know if he's a savior or a murderer. Nathan returned to his mop, his cleaning cart, his role as the invisible janitor. But something had shifted. The team was moving with new purpose, running new tests, checking his hypotheses. And through the glass, Warren watched him with something that looked like hope. Hours passed. The lab hummed with activity as researchers verified Nathan's theories. Zhang ran genetic sequences. Thornton analyzed binding sites. A young technician named Peterson checked the interferon response data 3 times. then called his supervisor to check it again. Nathan cleaned, mopped floors, wiped surfaces, emptied bins. He stayed visible, stayed harmless, stayed exactly what they expected a janitor to be. But his mind never stopped working, processing data from every monitor he passed, every conversation he overheard, every discarded note he glimpsed. Collins watched him like a hawk. Foster monitored from his station, and gradually, inevitably, the evidence mounted. "He's right about the chimera," Zhang announced, her voice tight with disbelief. 3 distinct viral families, artificially bound. "The binding mechanism matches Chen's theoretical framework," Peterson added. "Modified, but recognizable. Someone actually built it." Thornton was silent for a long time. Then, the interferon response, "It's..." Rivers was right. "The virus uses it as a catalyst. Every treatment we gave accelerated replication." "Grady Hospital confirmed," Foster said quietly. "They stopped antivirals an hour ago. Patients are stabilizing. Not recovering, but not declining as rapidly. The death curve is flattening." All eyes turned to Nathan. He wrung out his mop, methodical and calm. "The binding mechanism," he said without looking up. "Did you identify the weak point?" "There are several potential sites," Zhang said, "but testing them would require protein crystallography and molecular modeling." "I know." "How long?" 12 hours minimum." "You don't have 12 hours. Patient 24 will be critical in 8. You need to narrow the field." "How?" Thornton's voice had lost its edge, replaced by something that might have been respect or fear. Nathan finally looked up, met their eyes through the glass. "Let me see the full structural data. Let me model it. I can narrow it to 3 candidates in 2 hours." "Absolutely not," Collins said. "He's not getting access to sensitive systems. He already has access," Warren pointed out. "He's standing in the most secure lab in the facility, surrounded by the exact equipment he'd need. The question isn't whether to trust him with access. It's whether to trust him with time." Foster rubbed his face, exhausted. "If we give him access, and he's the creator, then we're no worse off than we are now," Warren finished. "But if he's innocent, and we waste time on bureaucracy, people die. Those are the options. Gerald, choose." The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. when Foster made his decision. "Limited access. Modeling software only. Zhang supervises every input. Collins maintains physical security. Rivers, if you so much as breathe wrong, you're done." "Understood." "Understood," Nathan said quietly. They moved him to a workstation, a computer terminal with dual monitors and processing power that would have been science fiction when he'd last worked in a legitimate lab. Zhang stood to his right, watching his hands. Collins stood to his left, watching his face. Thornton positioned himself behind, watching everything. Nathan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. 12 years since he'd done this. 12 years since he'd been allowed to think like a scientist instead of survival like a convict. The muscle memory was still there, buried under years of mopping and silence. "Pull up the viral genome," he said. "Full sequence." Zhang entered her credentials, brought up the data. The screen filled with genetic code, thousands of base pairs, proteins, binding sites, the blueprint of death rendered in letters and numbers. Nathan leaned forward, his eyes tracking patterns invisible to everyone else. "There," he said, pointing. "The alpha binding site. That's synthetic. See how the codon sequence repeats every 47 base pairs. That's not natural variation, that's programming." "Programming," Thornton repeated slowly. "Whoever made this virus coded it like software. Repeating sequences, modular components. It's elegant, actually. Terrifying, but elegant." Nathan's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up molecular models, rotating them in 3-dimensional space. The 3 viral families: Ebola, influenza, and he paused, zooming in on a section. "Marburg. The 3rd component is Marburg virus. That's the hemorrhagic factor." Zhang's face went pale. "Marburg? But that's one of the deadliest pathogens on Earth. 90% mortality rate in natural outbreaks. Whoever built this chose the 3 most lethal components they could find and engineered them to work together." Nathan continued working, building a molecular model on screen. "The binding mechanism uses a synthetic protein shell, probably derived from bacteriophage architecture. It's brilliant, really. The shell protects each viral component while keeping them synchronized. You sound almost admiring, Collins said coldly. Nathan stopped, looked at her. I'm admiring the science, Agent Collins, not the intent. Understanding how something works is the first step to destroying it. And this needs to be destroyed. He returned to the screen, fingers flying now, years of knowledge flooding back. The models took shape, protein structures folding and unfolding, binding sites highlighted in red, weak points glowing amber. The shell has 3 junction points where the viral components connect, he said. Here, here, and here. If we can disrupt even one junction, the entire structure destabilizes. The components separate and become vulnerable to conventional treatment. How do we disrupt it? Warren had entered the lab, standing behind Foster at the monitoring station. Chemical intervention. We need something that targets the synthetic protein shell without triggering the viral components. Something that, Nathan trailed off, his eyes distant. Something that binds to artificial amino acid sequences. Something that wouldn't exist in nature. That's impossible, Thornton said. We don't have drugs that specific. Not drugs. Antibodies. Nathan turned to face them. Designer antibodies. We create them in the lab, target them to the synthetic proteins, and they'll dismantle the shell without touching the natural viral components. Creating designer antibodies takes weeks, Zhang protested. Normally, yes, but you have access to the rapid synthesis protocols we developed for the Ebola outbreak in 2014. Remember? The emergency protocols that cut production time from months to days? Nathan looked at Thornton. You were on that team, Doctor. Thornton. You know it works. Thornton stared at him. That was. You developed those protocols? I supervised the team. But yes, and they're still viable. Still in the CDC database. Nathan pulled up another screen, navigated through security levels that Zhang hastily authorized. Here, Protocol E47. Emergency antibody synthesis. With the equipment in this facility, you could have functional antibodies in 18 hours. We have 41 hours until quarantine, Foster said. Then you have time. Barely, but time. Nathan isolated 3 protein structures on the screen, highlighted them. These are your targets. The junction points. You create antibodies for these 3 sequences, combine them in equal proportion, and administer them intravenously. The binding shell will collapse within hours. The viral components will separate and become vulnerable to standard antiviral treatment. Will it work? Warren asked. Theoretically, yes. Practically? Nathan shrugged. I won't know until you try it on patient samples. But it's your best option. Your only option, really. Zhang was already taking notes, her tablet filling with diagrams and calculations. Thornton pulled out his phone, calling someone. Peterson ran from the lab toward the synthesis facility. Movement.action. Hope where there had been only despair. Rivers, Foster's voice cut through the activity. Step away from the terminal. Nathan obeyed, hands raised slightly. Collins moved closer, her body tense. Doctor. Zhang, verify everything he's done. Every input, every model, every calculation. I want independent confirmation that this isn't a trap. Of course. Zhang's fingers moved across the keyboard, checking Nathan's work with the precision of someone who knew that lives depended on accuracy. The lab fell silent except for the click of keys and the hum of equipment. Nathan stood in the center, watched by everyone, trusted by no one. The janitor who might be a savior, or a murderer waiting to strike. Minutes crawled past. The molecular models are accurate, Zhang said finally. The binding sites match his predictions. The junction points are exactly where he indicated. The antibody protocols? Foster pressed. Standard CDC emergency procedures. Nothing unusual. Nothing dangerous. The protein targets? Synthetic sequences matching the viral shell structure. If his theory is correct, targeting these would disrupt the binding mechanism without damaging human cells or triggering immune cascade. Thornton ended his phone call. The synthesis lab is preparing. They can start production in 30 minutes if we authorize it. All eyes turned to Foster. He studied Nathan for a long moment. If this goes wrong, it won't, Nathan said quietly. You can't know that, no. But I can believe it. And right now, belief is all any of us have. Foster's jaw worked. Then, authorized synthesis, full emergency protocols, and someone get Grady Hospital on the line. Tell them we have a potential treatment, but it's untested. Ask if they have any patients willing to try experimental therapy. They're all dying, Warren said softly. I think they'll take the chance. The synthesis lab lit up like Christmas, machines whirring to life, researchers flooding in from their homes despite the late hour. The CDC operated on crisis mode. Now every available person, every resource, focused on a single goal, creating antibodies from a janitor's theory before Atlanta died. Nathan was escorted to a holding room. Not quite a cell, but close. A table, 2 chairs, fluorescent lighting, and a mirror that was definitely one-way glass. Collins sat across from him, a recorder between them. Now we wait, she said. Now we wait, Nathan agreed. You want to tell me what really happened 12 years ago? Nathan was quiet for a moment. Does it matter? It might. If you're about to save a city, people will want to know who you are, what you did, why you were in prison. I was in prison because I pleaded guilty to charges I didn't commit. Why would you do that? Nathan closed his eyes, and for a moment he was back to the laboratory, the alarms screaming, the smell of death in the air, Sarah bleeding on the floor, the viral containment breach spreading through the facility like wildfire. 11 people dead in 90 minutes. My wife was lead virologist on a research project studying hemorrhagic fever variants. We were trying to develop broad-spectrum vaccines, one treatment that could protect against multiple threats. Legitimate work. Important work. His voice was steady, mechanical, reciting facts to avoid feeling them. We had an assistant, brilliant kid named David Chen, 26 years old, PhD from Stanford, eager to make his mark. What happened to him? He was a bioterrorist, recruited by an extremist group while he was still in graduate school. They wanted access to weaponized pathogens. He wanted to prove that modern civilization was too fragile to survive. He sabotaged our containment protocols, stole samples, and released them into the laboratory ventilation system. Collins leaned forward. You caught him? I stopped him. Not fast enough to save Sarah or the others, but fast enough to prevent the virus from spreading beyond the facility. I sealed the containment area from the inside. Trapped myself in there with the virus. Nearly died. Nathan opened his eyes. Chen escaped in the chaos. Had papers, false identity, disappeared. The FBI never found him. So why did you take the blame? Because the facility needed a scapegoat. Because admitting they'd hired a terrorist would have destroyed the program, endangered funding, embarrassed powerful people. And because, his voice broke slightly, because my daughters were 6 years old, and their mother was dead, and I was facing either a short life in prison or a long life running from intelligence agencies, who would never believe my story. I pleaded guilty, got 7 years instead of 30, thought maybe when I got out, I could find Emma and Lily, be some small part of their lives. Did you? Nathan shook his head. They were adopted separately, sealed records. I don't even know their new names, don't know where they live, what they look like now. If they remember me at all. I'm sorry, Collins said quietly. So am I. They sat in silence. The recorder continued running, capturing everything, evidence for files that would be analyzed and debated for years. For what it's worth, Collins said, I believe you. Nathan looked up, surprised. About tonight anyway. The way you approach the problem, the care in your explanations, the desperation to save lives. She paused. That's not how guilty people behave. That's not how terrorists think. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If this antibody treatment fails, if people die because of your protocol, you'll still be blamed. You know that, right? You'll always be the convenient villain. I know. Nathan smiled, tired. But that's fine. I'm not doing this for redemption. I'm not doing this to clear my name or win back my life. I'm doing this because it's right. Because those people in Grady Hospital deserve a chance. Because maybe, somewhere, Emma and Lily will hear about this and know their father tried. Even if they never know it was me. The door opened. Warren stood there, breathless. The first antibody batch is complete. They're testing it on viral samples now. Results in 15 minutes. Nathan and Collins rose. The holding room suddenly felt too small, too confining. Everything all the years, all the pain, all the sacrifice came down to the next 15 minutes. They returned to the observation area outside the BSL- lab. The research team was assembled. Young, Thornton, Peterson, Foster, a dozen others whose names Nathan didn't know. Warren stood beside him, close enough that he could feel her solidarity without words. On the screens, magnified 10,000 times, the virus swarmed across cell cultures, lethal, elegant, unstoppable, until it wasn't. The antibodies hit the sample at 1:17 a.m. For long seconds, nothing changed. The virus continued its lethal replication, continued its programmed destruction. Then, slowly, the binding shell began to destabilize. "It's working," Zhang whispered. "Oh my God, it's working." The synthetic protein shell fractured, collapsed, disintegrated. The three viral components, Ebola, influenza, Marburg, separated and hung in cellular space like ships cut from their moorings. And without the protection of the shell, without the synchronized attack pattern, they were vulnerable. "The components are reverting to natural behavior," Thornton said, his voice filled with awe. "They're competing with each other for cellular resources, interfering with each other's replication. It's beautiful. It's science." Nathan said quietly, "It's what happens when you understand how things work." Foster was already on the phone. "Grady Memorial, we have a treatment. Emergency authorization. I need your most critical patient prepared for experimental therapy in the next 30 minutes. They called him Patient Zero, the first to receive the experimental antibody treatment. His name was Marcus Williams, a 34-year-old teacher who'd contracted the virus while visiting a friend in the emergency room. He'd been dying for 63 hours. His organs were failing. His family had said goodbye. Now he was their last, best hope." Nathan watched from the observation room as the CDC team transported the antibodies to Grady Memorial Hospital. Collins stood beside him, no longer watching him like a suspect. Foster monitored communications. Warren paced, unable to sit still. "They're administering now," Foster announced. The room held its breath. On the video feed from Grady's ICU, a nurse, her name tag said Emergency Room Nurse Patterson, injected the clear fluid into Marcus Williams for line. The antibodies entered his bloodstream, traveling to every cell, seeking their target with the precision of heat-seeking missiles. "Heart rate is elevated," Patterson reported. "Blood pressure rising. That's actually good. His BP has been dropping for hours." "Fever?" Zhang asked over the communication link. "Holding steady at 104. Not increasing." "Doctor, I think he's stabilizing." The words hung in the air, fragile and miraculous. Minutes became an hour. The monitors showed improvement, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Marcus Williams' oxygen saturation increased. His kidney function improved. The hemorrhaging slowed, then stopped. "His viral load is dropping," the attending physician reported, disbelief in his voice. "We're seeing a 40% reduction in circulating virus. Whatever you gave him, it's working." The observation room erupted. Zhang hugged Peterson. Thornton leaned against the wall, looking like he might cry. Foster allowed himself a small smile. Warren turned to Nathan. "You did it." "We did it," Nathan corrected. "All of us know." Her voice was firm. "You solved it. You saw what we couldn't see. You knew what we couldn't know. This is your victory, Nathan. Don't let them take it from you." But Nathan wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about 23 people who hadn't survived long enough for the cure. 23 families destroyed. 23 funerals. And somewhere in the wreckage of those lives, he saw Sarah's face. Saw Emma and Lily as they'd been 6 years old, crying at their mother's funeral, not understanding why Daddy couldn't hold them. "The other patients," he said quietly. "At Grady. How many are there?" "Patient 24 plus 6 more who showed symptoms today," Foster said. 7 total. Get them the treatment. All of them are tonight. We only synthesized enough for one, then make more. Use every synthesis machine in this facility. Work through the night. Those people are dying while we celebrate." Nathan's voice hardened. "They don't have time for bureaucracy or caution. They need treatment now." Foster looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "You heard him. Full production. Every available resource. We save them all or we've saved nothing." The team scattered, purpose renewed. The synthesis lab roared back to life. Researchers worked in shifts, sleeping in offices when they collapsed from exhaustion, returning to work when they woke. The CDC became a factory, producing hope in vials. By dawn, they had enough antibodies for all 7 patients. By noon, all 7 were improving. By sunset, Marcus Williams was sitting up in bed, asking for his family. By midnight, not one of the infected patients had died. The city of Atlanta would live. The quarantine was canceled. The crisis that had threatened to become a pandemic was contained, understood, defeated. And Nathan Rivers, the janitor who'd saved them all, returned to mopping floors. 3 days later, the story broke. CNN ran it first. Convicted bioterrorist key to stopping Atlanta virus. The headlines were sensational, the details murky, the truth buried under speculation and fear. Social media exploded with conspiracy theories. Was Rivers a hero or a villain? Had he created the virus? Had he stopped it? Had the CDC been foolish to trust him? Nathan watched the coverage from his efficiency apartment, the same place he'd lived since leaving prison. FBI surveillance was still in place. Collins had been apologetic but firm. Protocol, she'd said. Until we find out who actually created the virus, you're still a person of interest. He understood. Some stains never washed out. The knock on his door came at 8 p.m. He opened it to find Warren standing there, a folder in her hands. "May I come in?" Of course. She entered his sparse living space: a bed, a table, 2 chairs, nothing else. The life of a man who'd learned not to own things that could be taken away. "I've been investigating," she said without preamble. "The virus. Its origin. Who created it?" Nathan's pulse quickened. And I found him. David Chen. He's been working under an assumed name at a private biotech company in California, making designer viruses for pharmaceutical testing. Legitimate work covering illegitimate research. She opened the folder, showed him photos. He created this virus, Nathan. Released it in Atlanta as a test. He wanted to prove that modern healthcare infrastructure could be overwhelmed by a sophisticated biological weapon. Why Atlanta? Why now? Because you were here. He knew you worked at the CDC. Knew you'd been destroyed, discredited, turned into a janitor. He wanted to humiliate you one final time. Wanted you to watch helplessly while people died from a virus you could have stopped if anyone had listened to you. Nathan sat down slowly. He failed. Spectacularly. The FBI arrested him this morning. They found his laboratory, his notes, his plans for future releases. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. Warren sat across from him. But more importantly, his arrest clears you. Completely. The evidence proves you had nothing to do with the original outbreak that killed Sarah. Proves you tried to stop it. Proves everything you said at trial was true. The words should have brought relief. Joy. Vindication. Instead, Nathan felt only a profound exhaustion. Will they overturn my conviction? They're working on it. It'll take time. Legal system moves slowly. But yes, eventually you'll be exonerated. Your record cleared. Your reputation restored. She paused. The CDC is offering you a position. Full reinstatement. Lead virologist. Whatever title you want. They're desperate to make this right. And what do I want? Warren smiled. That's the question, isn't it? What does Nathan Rivers want after 12 years of punishment for crimes he didn't commit? Nathan looked out his small window at the Atlanta skyline. Somewhere in that city were his daughters, Emma and Lily, 18 years old now, living lives he wasn't part of. Did they think about him? Did they remember their father? Or had 12 years erased him completely? "I want to find my daughters," he said quietly. "I know. I've been working on that too." Warren pulled out another folder. Sealed adoption records are difficult, but not impossible, especially when you have credentials and a compelling case. She opened it, showed him to photos. Emma, Lily, 18 years old, beautiful, alive, living in different cities, with different families, but alive. "They don't know about each other," Warren said softly. "The adoptions were sealed separately, but they both know they were adopted. Both know their birth mother died. Both were told their father was in prison, but not why. Do they hate me? I don't know, but they deserve the chance to decide for themselves, to hear your story, to know who you really are." She pushed the folder across the table. "Their contact information is in there. Both of them agreed to meet with you. They're curious, cautious, but willing." Nathan's hands shook as he picked up the folder. His daughters, his Emma and Lily. "After 12 years, there's something else," Warren said. "The CDC wants to establish a new program, a global early warning system for engineered pathogens. They want you to lead it, design the protocols, train the researchers, build something that ensures what happened in Atlanta never happens again. That's a big job. It's the right job, for the right person." She stood, moved toward the door. "You saved this city, Nathan. You proved that second chances matter. That redemption isn't just about being forgiven, it's about choosing to be better than the worst thing that ever happened to you. Take the position. Find your daughters. Build your legacy. You've earned it." She left him there, holding the folder that contained his future. 6 months later, Nathan stood in the new Biosecurity Research Center, a facility he'd designed, staffed, and built from the ground up. The Global Pathogen Early Warning System was operational now, monitoring viral evolution in real time across 100 countries. The protocols he'd created were saving lives. The researchers he'd trained were stopping outbreaks before they became epidemics. But his proudest achievement stood beside him. Emma and Lily, his daughters, reunited after 12 years apart. They'd met cautiously at first, two strangers who shared blood and tragedy. They'd talked for hours, comparing childhoods, discovering similarities, mourning the years they'd lost. And slowly, carefully, they'd begun to know their father, Dr. Rivers. A young researcher approached a medical technician named Sarah Chen, no relation to David, thank God. "We're getting alerts from the monitoring system. Unusual viral activity in Southeast Asia. Might be nothing, but we check everything," Nathan finished. "Show me the data." He moved to the monitors, his daughters following. They were pre-med students now, both of them, inspired by the father they'd rediscovered. Emma wanted to be an epidemiologist. Lily was considering virology. They would be brilliant, both of them. Just like their mother. The data scrolled across the screen's genetic sequences, mutation rates, infection patterns. Nathan analyzed it with practiced efficiency, looking for the signatures that marked natural evolution from engineered threats. "It's natural," he said after a moment. "Influenza variant. Concerning, but manageable. Alert the WHO. Recommend standard containment protocols." "Yes, sir." The researcher hurried away. Nathan turned to find his daughters watching him with expressions he was still learning to read. "What?" he asked. "Nothing," Emma said. It's weird seeing you like this. In charge. Confident. This is who you really are." "This is who I became," Nathan corrected. "The man I was died in that laboratory 12 years ago. This version," he gestured at the facility around them, "this is what grew from the ashes." "Like a phoenix," Lily said softly. "Like a phoenix," he agreed. They stood together in the observation room, watching researchers work, watching the monitors track threats across the globe, watching the future unfold in real time. The janitor was gone. The convict was gone. The man broken by tragedy and injustice had been rebuilt into something stronger. Nathan Rivers had found his redemption, not in headlines or awards or public vindication, though those had come, but in the quiet knowledge that he was making the world safer, that he was teaching the next generation to recognize and stop biological threats, that he was part of his daughters' lives again. The virus that had killed his wife had also killed the man he'd been, but from that death had come new life, new purpose, new hope, and in a world threatened by invisible enemies, that hope was the most powerful vaccine of all.